Marco Reus. Daniel Malen! Wonderful!
Fantastic from Reus. Jude Bellingham, that's excellent. Jude Bellingham, this is absolutely brilliant. Jude Bellingham! Absolutely magnificent.
Reina, brilliant from the American. Just like that.
Graceful, salute turn for Anthony Modeste.
Not a bad idea! And there it is for Coco for Borussia Dortmund. The long wait is over. Unbridled joy in the Via Derby.
Hey, welcome back to the BVB podcast. My name's Jake, hanging as always. It's been a little bit, so I'm a little rusty, but hanging out with Carver as always. How are you doing, man? How's it going?
I'm doing well, yeah. Despite the U.S. getting knocked out of the World Cup, we still got to see the young lads finally compete after seems like forever. And we're looking like we're getting a lot of team players back into the Dortmund squad too. So hopefully the tides are turning in that sense. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. And I will, I guess, just some info for everybody. If over the next few, I don't know how long, if audio sounds a little differently, it probably has. The last few episodes, audio's sound a little different than what it has been in the past. Just a little update. I got a new job. I used to work in radio. Carver and I were able to record in the fancy, nice radio studio. The plan is to still put out high quality content, but in this slight transition phase. I do have a new job. It's just not in radio. Audio quality might vary here and there, but the plan is to get it up and running and as high quality as possible, but there will probably be a slight transition phase. The World Cup break helps a little bit in that, but...
Well, tell the people what you do now, though, Jake.
All right, new job.
Don't be humble.
New job is...
Brag a bit.
Honestly, like dream job scenario. Carver and I have talked a lot about this team before, so now I'm going to come at a slightly more biased basis, but I'm the new social media manager for St. Louis City SC, our new MLS club in St. Louis. So I am pretty pumped about that. It's pretty awesome.
You're goddamn right you are.
So we'll get the audio stuff figured out. But just bear with us if obviously the audio's been a little different than Carver and I sitting in a fancy studio together, but we will get it high quality again, we promise. So we are doing another USMNT. Carver and I, we kind of planned to do USMNT coverage, but then we didn't like sit down and have like a solid plan. And then like holidays happened and again, settling in a new job. And then I think maybe we both kind of realized like, oh, it's nice like having a little bit of a break here. We didn't want to overdo it with USMNT coverage. So, but we're going to come back and recap kind of what happened with USMNT, not go too in depth, but like look at big picture, what happened. We're going to look ahead a little bit to 2026, but yeah, just another USMNT episode. We do have some Dortmund news. We'll probably talk a little bit about Dortmund players still in the World Cup, and then just what's to come a little bit. We are going to do our mid-season review episode next week is the plan. So Carver, real quick, do you want to touch on that? If anyone hasn't filled out that guide, is that still, or the survey thing, is that still up?
Yeah, the survey's still online, so it's pinned to our Twitter. If you haven't yet, go ahead and check it out. It's just, we wanted to hear your thoughts on how the season's going so far, thoughts on the manager, thoughts on his tactics, his subs, the players themselves, and just your overall thoughts going forward of who you think is going to be here next year. How do you think we're going to compete in all three competitions in the spring? So yeah, it's been good fun for everyone who's been tuning in so far, and I've been peeping the replies here and there and seeing what people are saying. So I'm excited to reveal all the results next week.
Yeah, a big part of the midseason review is you, everyone who listens, which hopefully we say it enough, but like how much we appreciate everyone who listens because it's been awesome. And it's why we're continuing this podcast. So if you want to send your feedback in for that, again, we have it linked on our Twitter at thebvbpod. You can also, of course, find that link in the description of this episode, and make sure you do that before next week when we record the episode. We'll start to get a little more active on Twitter. I know Carver's been really good about tweeting during the World Cup, but as we get closer to that episode, we'll put out more tweets and everything. So make sure you check that out, and so you can help us out with the episode next week and get a shout out too. But let's start before we dive into USMNT. I know there's some news we just got as of we're recording this today on Wednesday. We got some news I think just came out today. Carver, do you want to jump into that?
Yeah, it's not the greatest of news, unfortunately. It's another health update, but not for Haller this time. Peter Hermann, the assistant manager, assistant manager to Edin Terzic at Dortmund, is leaving the club with immediate effect due to health issues. That hasn't been specified or posted online exactly what is going on, but Herman did have a quote here saying, "My time at BVB was short but very intense. I've come to really appreciate this club. The team and the entire environment over the past few months have really enjoyed working with the club that loves and lives football so much. Unfortunately, I won't be able to work for BVB much longer because health always comes first." So yet another unfortunate event and another big blow and another big gap in the team, unfortunately. Herman, excuse me, has 3 decades of experience in the Bundesliga. He's been assistant manager. He's been manager of a few clubs. So his expertise and his experience, of course, is going to leave a pretty big gaping hole. But Terzic and the board has talked about already looking for a replacement in the coming days and hopefully going to have something announced in the next week. But yeah, for right now, I think we're just going to have to sit tight and hope for the best, and obviously hope for the best outcomes for health for Peter Herman as well. I mean, the man's 70 years old. It's a grueling job.
Yeah, it's tough to see that when news like this, when it's related to like health or that kind of stuff, because you just never want to see people go through anything like that. I mean, it happens in life, unfortunately. It's the bad part of life, but it hurts when it's someone who is like part of this community that we love so much, especially so. So, but it is going to be interesting to see maybe how like what someone else can bring to the team and the coaching staff also moving forward, which, I mean, depending on, we'll find out how you're feeling about the coaching staff and everything in our midseason review next week. Maybe people want some change. Not that this is the reason we want to see change, but it is going to be interesting to see what changes and who comes in and how that can shift things around a little bit. But let's jump into USMNT. Last time we talked, we had Matt Baker on with us to recap the first game against Wales. A lot has happened since then.
Yep.
We played against England, played against Iran, and we went out in the World Cup against the Netherlands. Carver, I'll let you start. Do you want to start England? Do you want to just recap it all? How are you feeling about the World Cup?
Let's definitely start with England, because I'd love to shit on them a little bit more, because what a game. I mean, every single person on the planet knew what the outcome of this game was going to be, and pretty much every single person, including myself and a lot of the American fan base, wrong. Rightfully so. I mean, I'm happy to be proven wrong in that fact, because, I mean, the U.S. played incredibly well, in my opinion. I mean, for a team that is full of very young, very inexperienced talent, to go against, just be thrown against the Wolves, or thrown into the Wolves, I mean, against a side that had 10 starting Premier League players. The only player on that team that wasn't a Premier League player, Jude Bellingham, and it just ran them off the pitch, basically.
Not starting lineup. That whole squad, Bellingham is the only one who's not in the Premier League in the entire squad.
Insane. And don't forget, too, the last time Jadon Sancho was in the English squad, he was a Dortmund player as well. So I'm looking at you, Jude. But yeah, I mean, just completely pinned England in their own third for the majority of the game until like maybe 15 minutes ago, or to go in the last 10, 15 minutes. I mean, England were, sure, they were unimaginative, they were flat, they were uninspired, but I don't want to put too much of that on simply England not being that great or not that good, as opposed to just how good the U.S. played. I mean, they were really well drilled, they were well organized. We were completely the opposite of what I just said. We were very imaginative, and we looked like we had something to prove.
Yeah, and I think especially when you look at how England has been playing throughout the rest of this tournament, like they've been, even in their not quarterfinal, but the round of 16 against Senegal, they still won 3-0 and looked fantastic in that game. Like, it was a little shaky early on. Senegal had some chances, but England's been playing extremely well in this tournament. And yeah, maybe there's going to be a one-off, but I don't think it's all because England was poor. I think U.S. We're going to talk Berhalter later, but you can give Berhalter credit here with how he set up in this game.
Yeah, you can.
And like I think it was more on how we played than England being poor, like you said in this match.
Yeah, and just the fact that we made their midfield look pretty much non-existent. I mean, I can count on my hand how many times I've seen Jude Bellingham be that non-existent, or that, just ran out of the game, really. Him and Declan Rice. I mean, those two are massive names. They're both I mean, the next up and coming talent. So they're probably going to be England's double pivot for the next few years minimum. I would imagine Jude Bellingham easily the next decade. But again, completely pinned them down and looked extremely dominant.
Yeah, very unlucky, I would say, to not get a goal, especially when we had just corner after corner after corner. Although I'll say unlucky with the asterisk that we didn't look too dangerous in a lot of moments throughout this tournament. So maybe that was just us kind of playing how we've been playing. I'd still say unlucky just because we were creating so many chances, but then again, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? It's just like we got in dangerous areas a lot. We didn't really create that many good chances, not only in this game, but throughout the tournament. But we definitely, it looked like we were the better team in that. And for that reason, I'll say, yeah, maybe we were unlucky to not get a goal and not get that win.
I definitely thought we made a lot of good chances personally. It's just that this team not having a number 9 for not even years at this point, but literal decades. And I'm hoping in the next few years that can change because just the way that the culture of the sport is shifting so dramatically in this country. Yeah, it's not like we weren't able to get in those areas like you were saying, but just you look up and Sargent had a lot of great movement off the ball, but he's not someone that can, I guess, really be that great of a finisher. Well, he was earlier in his younger career, but he hasn't produced it at this kind of level yet, even though he's getting there. And Haji Wright was pretty disappointing as well that entire tournament. Goes to show you that Pivak was definitely the right option, and I stand by that. Last thing, too, is just Greg still making some questionable subs late in the game. He brought on Shaq Moore. I can't remember if that was the first or the second time that he brought him on, but after that first time, you know that he's definitely not the right option for another go, and he gave him another go. And for someone who is just extremely limiting his chances for Reyna and not giving him an opportunity to shine, I mean, my God, he gave Shaq Moore way too much time on the field, in my opinion. I mean, the fact that Scally didn't even get a sniff.
Yeah.
It was shocking.
I didn't understand that substitution at all. And I mean, this is where we will criticize Greg, I guess. But that made no sense to me. And I don't know if maybe his thought is Shaq Moore is more like defensive and reliable in that. I would say no, just when I'm going to be that guy who just like poo-poos on the MLS and is working for an MLS club. But when you look at this level, I just don't know if Shaq Moore is the right call. Like, and I know like Scally will obviously give you more going forward. So I don't know where that mistrust is to not even give him a shout. And that's not only Scally, but like Reyna obviously did not get enough time in this tournament either. But yeah, that was a really weird sub. I didn't understand it because at that point, if you're saying maybe Shaq Moore is more defensively sound, in that, like how the game was going, like, do you really just want to hunker down at that point? Like, I don't know what his tactics were in that move. And if it was to be more defensively sound, I don't understand why that was a tactic when we were creating more and more chances, especially like towards the end and the later part of the second half. It felt like we were going to get a goal, if anything. So why give up on that? Like, I would rather, I think in going in this game that we were expecting to lose, maybe, why not go all out and try to get the win if the outcome might be a loss anyways? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, the whole Shaq Moore thing in general was just confusing. I personally haven't seen much of him play at all, at least since he got to Nashville. I saw, bits and pieces of him in the second division of Spain before that, but just, really, really puzzled of just the fact that he got 2 chances there. But anyway, going on to Iran, the only change that we made in that game was Carter Vickers starting, which, I've been a fan of for years now. I mean, the man completely gets overlooked when it comes to playing for this team. Him and Ream, funny enough, it's so great, but so shocking that they both started, considering that neither of them really played at all in the last year for the U.S. men's national team, and they definitely Ream was not even going to be considered to make the plane ride. And then here both of them are playing for a team playing against a team where you have like a must-need win. I mean, you have to go out and get the victory here and get a result. But I mean, Carter Vickers, I loved. For the most part, I thought he did very, very well. I mean, I imagine he was picked to start because he can help progress the ball. He plays at a club where they dominate possession in Celtic, And even going back through past recent seasons, he was a ball-playing defender at clubs during his loan spells away from Spurs. I mean, Jake, I don't know how much you kept up with him whenever he was being loaned out constantly from Spurs, but I mean, at teams like Bournemouth and stuff like that, he was, Swansea, even if I'm not wrong, he was the player on that team that was consistently trying to progress the ball. So him and Ream, I think, were the partnership that Berhalter was going for there. But yeah, I mean, besides that, he was a tank in defense. He brought in a little bit more pace than Zimmerman. Overall, I thought he was very solid, and I'm very happy he got his opportunity. It's well-deserved.
Yeah, I thought he was great too. I think after the Wales game, even though Zimmerman made that mistake with the penalty, I was very adamant, like him and Ream were still who I thought should start. And we saw them against England, but also Cameron Carter-Vickers didn't do anything wrong, and I thought he played great too. Like, I think either if he would have started earlier, I would have been fine with it too. I just think his performance, definitely deserved the call and to be on this trip, and I'm glad that he did get some time because he proved and just showed that he should be playing and he should be considered, or he should have been considered maybe earlier in this. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to see. Maybe this is one of the moments where you can look at Greg Berhalter and be like, thank you for kind of admitting you're wrong almost, and bringing these guys, you know what I mean? And apologizing in a way for not calling up Ream before and accepting these are the guys. How crazy is that we don't see Ream at all, and then last minute gets the call and just is the starting center back for every match.
He's the guy too.
The guy, yeah.
Yeah. Now Carter-Vickers is the only center half going into the next World Cup with World Cup experience too, which is going to be huge for him. So I'm very excited to see what he can do in the coming years. I mean, I think he's been proving himself at these divisions in the Championship for a long time now. And I mean, it's going to be interesting to see who he's going to potentially partner with to start in 2026.
Do you know how old Carter-Vickers is? Carter-Vickers? I
he's
probably have
24, if not 25.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he's got a couple more World Cups in him. If Tim Ream is playing at 35, so.
Well, yeah, Tim Ream and Zimmerman both, I highly doubt that either of them will make, definitely not Ream for sure, but
no.
I highly doubt Zimmerman makes the 2026 squad.
Yeah, but I think Carter-Vickers is at a good club now, Celtic, for him. It's that's a good level for him to just continue to grow and develop. Obviously at Spurs, he was just loaned out, loan after loan after loan, and it seems like this is finally a good spot for him to just build. And then maybe he will make a step to a Premier League, back in the Premier League and be at a stable at a club. But this is I think a really good spot for him over the next couple seasons, 2 or maybe 3. But yeah, he's in a really good spot, which is just going to be great for development moving forward. And then, man, this game, we just controlled this game. It was Iran just could not. They could hardly get out of there 18, but could hardly cross that halfway line. It was nuts. It just seemed like we had the ball throughout the entirety of this game, especially early on. They couldn't do anything. We were winning everything back in midfield and intercepting all the passes. It was just it was surprising that this game only ended 1-0, but it was really good to watch and really encouraging. And early on in the game, I was well, we're going to just destroy them.
I mean, we were within arguably centimeters of scoring a second. So yeah, I too was very surprised that this was only a 1-0 game. Yes, second game in a row with really dominating possession, and not only that, but really controlling the game, like you said, dictating the tempo. I think the only time in that game where people start to felt nervy was those last completely unnecessary 9 or 10 minutes or whatever it was of added time at the end of the game, which I too, I haven't heard and I haven't seen anything online of why this is, but like everyone else, I'm completely clueless as to why there's 10-minute added minutes every half, not only in the 90th minute, but in the 45th minute as well. So besides those last few minutes in the 90th, I think we looked very sharp and very hungry too. We're out to get a result and not settle for this.
Yeah, it was, and I get rotating again. This is Berhalter and improper use of subs. I get the end where you're just hunkering down, especially that late in the game. It's okay, he puts 5 at the back. Let's hunker down. Let's hold on this lead, which is a lot more scary when you have 10-minute stoppage time. And I get that, rotating those players out, but it was so scary because they were creating so many chances. There was a couple penalty shouts, and you almost wish we would have just had that defensive or played defensively with the ball, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because we were dominating the game so much with possession, and they couldn't get the ball off us, or they couldn't progress with the ball at all. So it's like you wish we would have just played out like that the rest of the game rather than just like sitting back, because we almost lost it. There's like a couple chances in there.
Yeah, and actually now it's coming to me. It was Shaq Moore's first game against England, and the second game was whenever he came on against Iran at the end, and even that was somehow less convincing than his first game. So yeah, I don't know how he got another sniff of the field after his first one. I mean, for Berhalter, I guess, trying to communicate to the media and the rest of the country that I'm a coach that picks the hot hand. I mean, it seems a little inconsistent.
Well, he says that, and then we'll close out this game. We get the 1-0 win, obviously. Second in the group, move on to take on Netherlands. They're in the round of 16. I feel like I'm calling that. It's not the round of 16.
No, that's kind of, you were right. Yeah,
okay.
Round of 16.
All right, cool. It seems wrong as I'm saying it. But anyways, taking on Netherlands. As you said, Berhalter likes to pick the guy with a hot hand or hot foot, and he starts Ferreira, who hasn't played since the MLS season ended
at all.
I think for him in October, and he hasn't touched the field in the World Cup yet, and yet he picks Ferreira.
Yeah.
What?
I think you should be taking these things into account before Qatar of, okay, say one of our strikers gets a knock, and which was Sargent in that game, and then you play Ferreira, who, like you said, has not played at all, very inexperienced, not even at the World Cup level, but still, I mean, he's a young dude in the MLS, and he's obviously probably not going to do much of a good job of trying to hold up the ball well or make himself available against this low block Iranian team. So very strange choice in that sense, and I think he knew he wasn't going to start Wright because Wright wasn't playing that well. And I don't know. If you kind of know that's going to happen, why wouldn't you go with Pifok to begin with? Someone who I think would have done a hell of a job, a lot better than Haji and Ferreira for that game.
Carver, you got to get over it. Pifok's not here. Get over it.
Yeah.
No, but it was, and I don't want to take anything away from Ferreira. I feel like he is a good player, and he's, like you said, he's so young, and he has a lot of time to develop and become a hopefully what we need, a great striker in the future. And I think he has the opportunity to go play in Europe in the future. But I think the fault here is on Greg, like not giving him any chances before. Like if Ferreira would have said started the first game, I probably wouldn't have. I would have been sad because I would have wanted Sargent from the STL's perspective. But you know what I mean? I think kind of that's who I thought. I thought Ferreira was going to start. I think starting against the Netherlands, the thing that's the worst part about that is that he hadn't even came on as a sub. So why? Yeah, I don't know. It's just bad. It's not good. And I think that's almost like per Gio Reyna coming on too. I liked what he did in this game, but like imagine how much more productive he could have been if he had more than 7 minutes on the field in this game.
Yeah, or even just more than an hour in the entire tournament.
It's on Berhalter to not properly like use his subs and like give these guys kind of a better warm up. Like let Reyna play for 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes in the first game. We talked about that. Like why are you bringing him on with 7 minutes left? And that is in the long run hurting how they're going to perform later on in the tournament in other games, because they need more on-field time to actually produce, especially
against such a big opposition. And Ferreira just, I mean, now that we're going into the Netherlands, I just don't imagine he's going to be able to do too much against that kind of high quality level. But also, unlike everyone else, I think with the Netherlands, I mean, Van Gaal really did his homework on how to play against this men's national team. I mean, he had a really solid tactical masterclass there, and using a very narrow front three to man mark our midfield, and that way he could shut out Adams of this game, because a lot of our ball progression through the midfield comes through Adams, and he's able to kind of pick passes out, of course, be that fireman when needed, which he was terrific at the entire tournament. But we'll get to more of those individual shout-outs in a bit, but he was able to shut out Adams in that midfield, and the Netherlands were just able to kind of pick us apart. And also, he had great awareness of trying to find space behind our fullbacks too. I mean, Netherlands did a great job of kind of exploiting both of this team's weaknesses of trying to dictate the midfield and get Adams, not involved. And at the same time, whenever they're on the counterattack, there's going to be acres of space behind players like Destin Robinson. I mean, no fault to them. They're obviously big hustlers. Robinson is definitely a hustler, and he's got an extremely high work rate, so he can track back. But he's also very much an attacking fullback. So when he's making these runs up the field and high up the field and on the wing, there's just going to be space behind, and Zimmerman doesn't really have the pace nor quality to kind of pick those attacks apart. So yeah, we got punished.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, we had Christian Pulisic had the chance in the 3rd minute, and obviously the game would have been totally different if that would have went in, and like the Netherlands would have had to change their tactics very early on in the game. So it's so unfortunate that didn't happen. And I think one thing that was so frustrating about this game was, again, we were getting into dangerous areas, but the quality wasn't there to get quality shots on target. Pulisic had a number of shots, but they were all so poor. Like they were right at the keeper, didn't have a lot of pace on them. And so it's frustrating to see that lack of quality. And then in turn, Netherlands scored 3 goals on like 4 shots. They were just so clinical. And obviously you can look at the talent difference. Like all those guys play at a very high level and have been for a while. And this is like, I think it was such a contrast of the just soccer football culture. And like, that's how your team, European team plays, not your team. European team plays just on the like how football is a part of their culture and how they play and know how to play at such a young age. And it's something that obviously the U.S. still has a lot to work on, and it's going to be a long time till we get there, if we ever get there. But this was such a contrast of like quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Players like Depay, when they're healthy and when he's playing for the Dutch team, he's top quality, man. He's one of the best players, I think, in the world in that sense, just strictly in those circumstances. But I mean, going back to what you were saying earlier, I mean, these players have been playing with each other for a long time too. They've played at, I think in the Nations League semis or even finals. And players like Van Dijk have been in the national team squad for a while. Dumfries, Blind, Klaassen, De Jong. You can go down the list. So, I mean, these players knew how to run, certain systems under Van Gaal, who's also been there for a very long time. And they executed their plan very, very well.
Also, just that defensive line is insane and insanely tall and just big dude. So one, Ferreira's in there, tiny dude. But then
I was say Ferreira.
When our system is like trying to, I mean, at first, we were trying to get a lot of crosses in, or we started getting some corner kicks, but it's like we almost had no chance with how big that defensive line is and just them in general. Like it was, anytime a cross was coming in, I was like, there's no way we're getting ahead on this. Like I just had no confidence in that, just pure physicality.
Yeah, who could have helped with that? There's a player in the Bundesliga actually who
is having himself a nice vacation right now.
Yeah, it was a disappointing game against the Netherlands. I mean, of course, we would have wanted to continue this party going even further, but at some point, reality's got to hit you of this is the U.S. we're talking about, and we're still years, if not decades, away from really being a competitive team. Although I personally believe this team is going to be, I'll say it on the record right now, and I've said it for 4 years now, actually back to before 2018, the U.S. men's national team will be ranked in the top 10 FIFA rankings before 2030. You can quote me. But it's not 2030 yet. It's not even 2026 yet. And we still have a long way to go for this team to really kind of grow together, play together, learn each other, learn against other opposition that's at such a high and different quality. So a lot of growing to do, but looking ahead, very excited still. I mean, yeah, you still don't have a center forward, and that was very apparent in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you know how optimistic I like to get, and looking ahead to 2026, I'm just going to say it. Optimistic Jake is here fully, which I want to dive into in just a second. But first, to wrap up Netherlands game, obviously at halftime we saw Gio Reyna come on finally. And do you think there is any? I mean, this game, like if we go into the half, this game like 1-0, I still had some confidence we could get back into it. I thought, okay, cool. Hopefully Berhalter makes some tactical changes because clearly we're seeing how this game is going. And like what we've been doing isn't working. They're sitting back, so we need to change something. So I was optimistic that maybe Greg would make a change to make something happen. And then the fact that we go 2-0 right at the half is just like devastating. Like pretty much all hope was lost for me at that point.
Yeah. But at least Greg's, reacted in this sense. I mean, against Wales, he was just kind of sitting there in the first like 15, 20 minutes of the second half going like, wow, I had no idea they'd come out like this. So, he's actually trying to be a little bit more proactive in that sense and make changes early on and not in the 65th, 70th minute. But it's obviously going to be really hard for Reyna to grow into this game. The dude's had 7 minutes before this in the World Cup. So, I mean, we can't also just expect him to be like, oh, okay, finally, there's Reyna, go score a hat trick. But I mean, it was. I think it was always going to be a tough hill to climb. And also the mentality of the team too. It's a mountain to climb as a whole. So yeah, it was disappointing that Reyna couldn't really get himself involved too much. But there's not much you can really expect when someone has such little time to implement their style of play into the game.
Yeah, and I don't think that change is enough. It seemed like Reyna went on, but it was still kind of the same thing. Like the same. We're still trying to play the same style. So it's like, what really can you expect? Like you need to scrap your whole game plan. You can't just put Gio in there and let him like or like put all that on him. Be like, all right, Gio, like you said, all right, Gio's in. It's gonna work now. Like I think you have to at that point you have to change tactics, and I don't think that's what happened. All he did was put Gio on. That's
fair. That's fair. He wasn't really, I guess, taking note of how Van Gaal was doing his homework. I mean, all 3 goals were, I'm not going to say identical, but sure as hell very similar. And the players should have reacted as well and made that not let that happen again. It was identical for 2 of those goals of coming down the wing and then instead of crossing it in, just kind of setting a low driven pass at the top of the box for Blind or whoever to hit it, and just completely flat-footed in defending there. So that was a bit concerning, and that should have been addressed. You're right.
I mean, okay, so do you want to, is there any like overall from these games? I mean, we kind of touched on a lot of it. A lot of it's, I think, our feelings about Greg, and I think at this point people probably know.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's obviously, again, a very young and experienced team, but I was impressed. Like I said, this team is a core group of young players has been growing together since, 2018. And we haven't really been able to see them play much. I think in 2019, the U.S. men's national team played like 3 games, if I'm not wrong, 19 or 2020, I forget. So this was finally an opportunity to see them compete, and I was impressed. I think they also impressed the vast majority of the world. I mean, plenty of pundits in general and different countries were impressed with our squad and also impressed with a few different individuals. I mean, if you want to go down that list, Adams is the first one that comes to mind for me. I mean, I know he just moved to Leeds, but I mean, he was fantastic.
Yeah, I think he was the player of the he was the top player for the US whole tournament. Like if
I agree, I think he was the player of our tournament.
There's a title for that. He gets it. The man of the tournament for US. Like he gets it. He was incredible. Again, we didn't give him enough credit. Probably should have in that England game. Like talking about the England game, he was bossing it.
Well, I touched on how he was really covered really heavily against Netherlands, but yeah, he was doing exactly what I was saying earlier against England, which he was being the one that could drive and progress our attacks. And again, he was just fantastic with his defending and putting out fires left and right, and also being a great leader on top of that. I said for years now, I don't think Pulisic should be captain, and I thought it would be McKennie. A few friends and I thought it would be, he would be that guy, but Adams has happily proved me wrong in that sense, and I think he's done his job as a leader on this team.
Yeah, and maybe we'll even see him captain in 2026. So I want to jump into this list that USMNT only put out, which is really, again, I'm optimistic. I'm excited. This is the kind of stuff that gets me hyped because, as you said, I think it was, although disappointing results, but I think it was still, I was still impressed with how we played, and I think we ended up doing better than what I expected. I mean, we didn't lose in the group stages, Yeah, we didn't score as many as we.
No, we exceeded a lot of my expectations.
Yeah, we didn't score as much as I wanted to, or we needed to. But to group stage, like only conceding one goal, which was off a PK, and no losses. Like, I thought that was fantastic. I think overall, I'm happy with how the team played. I don't agree with a lot of things Greg did, but I'm happy and especially optimistic looking at this list for its players' ages in 2026. And I know we talked about probably pre-USMNT coverage, or I don't know if I remember, it was the Wales game, but I talked about Yedlin. Like, Yedlin's probably a good squad player because he has some World Cup experience. But going into 2026 in North America, we have Christian Pulisic, who will be 28, Tyler Adams, 27, Gio Reyna is going to be 24, Weston is going to be 28, Yunus Musa, 24, Sergiño Dest, 26, Tim Weah, 26, Brendan Aronson, 26, plus younger Aronson, who's probably going to be making a mark in this USMNT game. His team is, I think, will be 22 or something like that. I don't remember. I think he's 19 now, so maybe 22 or 23. Chris Richards, 26, Anthony Robinson, 29, Joe Scally, 23, and Cameron Carter-Vickers, 28. I know I added the other Aronson brother in there, but everyone else, that's who was on this roster this year and that's how old they will be in 26. So still really good, like, age in their prime, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, all hitting their prime. And I wanted to touch on a few more that just stood out to me in this tournament. And one of them you mentioned already was Robinson. A handful of pundits I saw online saying, a top club should sign him. I mean, he's a class fullback. And I've said that for years too. I mean, watching him at Fulham before this season too, I think he's definitely got the quality. Going back to even before 2018, I was like, we do not have a left back right now, and yet we're still not playing Anthony Robinson for some reason. And now that he's finally been starting to get those chances in recent years, it looks like he's just that role is his. So I'm very impressed with him in this tournament. Matt Turner, I mean, he took his opportunity and proved that he was the right choice as our number one for this tournament. Wasn't tested much, but rose to the occasion when he was. I have a few more, but did you want to touch on any of those two?
Robinson, I did see some links to Newcastle today, and I saw some people with mixed feelings saying he should stay with Fulham over Newcastle, but Eddie Howe's been doing a crazy good job at Newcastle. I don't love Newcastle as a club, but Eddie Howe has them just like cracking, and I think that would be a good move. I also wouldn't hate seeing him stay at Fulham for the rest of this year and then maybe making a move next year. But I did see those links. Yeah, he's great. The sad thing is
Newcastle are in third, by the way.
Yeah, no, they're flying. And like I said, Eddie Howe's I know they have new owners and new investment, and it's a lot of money. They're basically owned by an entire country. But I think how Eddie Howe is playing that team, it would be a good move. But one hindrance to, us not having a left back, I think this hindered Robinson is I think at the end of he was so tired after games, and because we didn't even have another left back to come in. We had Joe Scally, but he plays on the right mostly. And I know Des can play both sides, but he's starting on the right. So we literally didn't have a backup left back in this entire tournament, which means Robinson had to play a ton, which ended up probably hurting in the later moments of probably those last couple games. Definitely didn't help. Besides
him, though, thankfully, and then by 2026, we will have other options. I mean, if I'm not wrong, Caleb Wiley is a 17-year-old left back for Atlanta United, and he's played, at least 20, 25 games in the MLS this year. So he's already proving himself to be someone who can maybe compete and have a future in this squad. I thought George Bello was going to be that person also whenever he made his move to Bielefeld, but I've been keeping up with him and he doesn't play much at all, unfortunately. But Bello's only 20, so I highly imagine he's going to, maybe move if he doesn't continue to have any time on the pitch. But thankfully, that position looks like it's going to actually have some depth in the coming years, is what I'm trying to say. Unlike the striker position, which I think that's still a very big question mark.
Another option, I've seen this guy play a bit, and I think there's been some links with maybe him moving overseas. Eventually, really young guy who plays for New York Red Bulls, Tolkien. He's a homegrown guy, and I think he plays left back. So that is, but yeah, hopefully the future will bring a few more options to the left back position. Another player just stand out who I thought, because I said, I think when you and Matt and I talked after the Wales game, is like Haji Wright. I've always said he's kind of been a mystery to me just because I don't watch him enough. I don't watch him week in and week out. But I thought he had some really good moments through this game, obviously, or through this World Cup. Obviously, he had the goal against Wales to kick off our campaign. But I just think every time I see him, he like excites me, and I always feel like he's going to create something, like create a good moment and a good chance. So he's a player who I thought deserves maybe some praise. Maybe you can't look at the Netherlands game, but I thought he had some really good moments throughout this tournament too. Interesting.
Okay, he was not on my list personally. I thought he was kind of it's just extra tall body and kind of a waste of a spot on the roster. I thought there were some other options, like Pepe was someone who's picking up form recently, and even though Pifak his form has been suffering, I think he could have offered a lot more in those said moments that you were talking about. Two more players here, and then I'll just wrap up with the first one, which is Musa. He played fantastic for the most part, and there's a lot of big clubs that are really interested in him, teams that desperately need a midfielder just like him. And I don't think it's too crazy to think that Liverpool could be interested in him, given the style of play that they have, given the lack of center midfielders that they have that are young. I know they have a few, but also they have a lot of aging center midfielders. So I think he could slot in there. But I also want him to get time, of course. So I think he could also just, weigh out his options and take his career choice seriously, where he wants to go next, because Musa is a top talent and he should not be wasted in these coming years before 2026. And then lastly was Ream. We have to talk about Ream, of course. And we had two St. Louis people on this squad for going to Qatar, and just Ream just completely bossing our defense and being that leader in the back that can, help our defense stay organized. He's got the experience. He's got the experience at a top level. He's also a ball-playing defender. Like you were saying, look over, or try not to look too much at the Netherlands game. Probably the same for Ream. He wasn't that great. And I think he gave the ball away, or possession away 3 times in a matter of minutes in the opening minutes of the Netherlands game. But besides that, in the group stage, he was phenomenal, in my opinion.
Yeah, I will point out one positive in the Netherlands game about Ream. There was one, I think it was kind of maybe it was a long ball over the top, and it looked like we were kind of caught out, like, because Robinson was way down the line, and it was like a foot race between Ream and I remember their striker.
I do remember that, yeah.
And I was concerned because, like, okay, this is where people are going to call out Ream because he doesn't have the speed. But he did. He got there.
Pace.
He got there and he made the stop.
I loved how he called off Turner. Like he called off Turner. Like, no, I got it. But he had like another 10 yards to run after that. So I was looking at Turner, and then I was looking at Ray. I'm like, okay, bet you got him. And he kept sprinting, and he was really not making up too much ground. And I was like, oh shit.
I think we might have got fortunate.
But yeah, he did eventually just barely got there.
I think we got fortunate off like maybe a bad touch, but hey, it worked out. He got there. He made the block. The other defenders and midfielders came in, and yeah, I was very concerned though, and I was like, oh no, this is the moment where everyone's gonna yell about him, but he pulled it off, so I was happy about that.
Yeah, he stepped up to the plate huge. Ream was very impressive in this tournament. And that was pretty much, other people, of course, had moments. McKennie had moments. Pulisic had moments. Dest definitely had moments too. But those are the players that I'm like, wow, they were really impressive all around for the most part.
Yeah, I was happy to see Dest. I think there was an interview before the game, but he had some really good moments too in the Netherlands game specifically. There was that one where he blew past probably 4 or 5 defenders, and got a shot off. Ended up being saved, but for him to play against his real home country was a really cool opportunity for him. And I think he said before the match, this is the most important game he's ever played in, which was really cool for him to just show his abilities against them. Obviously, he's a USMNT guy now, and we love him. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad that he got to show that and kind of stick it to him a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So moving on, like we said, we got a lot of experience for the next World Cup, which is exciting. So we don't have to. I think people know how we feel about Berhalter. I don't think he makes the right decisions. I heard some pundits say, "Oh, you got to give credit for Berhalter for his like opening game tactics and his starting lineup. I'm like, this lineup, the starting lineup picks itself. Like, the only question mark is like, why aren't you starting Gio Reyna, or maybe Brendan Aronson deserves this shout. But those are two wide players, and obviously we have Pulisic and Weah, and like those guys could maybe be interchangeable with Reyna and Aronson. But besides that, like the rest of this lineup picks itself. Striker is like up in the air, whoever you put in there, whatever, because we don't have one. So it's like, I don't really want to give Berhalter credit for picking a great starting 11 every time, because like, what are your options really? And I don't like the decisions he made with subs. He set up against England well, but I guess coming back to the question, is Berhalter the guy for 2026?
2026. Oh, I'm going to say no at the moment, just because that's so much time in between now and then. Not strictly because, right now is he someone that could lead the team, because I do think he can be. He definitely has shown it. And I mean, he's done tremendous work with recruitment as well. I cannot discredit him whatsoever in that sense of, I mean, look how many dual nationals, close to a dozen now, in the last few years that have chosen the U.S. And I think a lot of them have said strictly because of the way Berhalter approached them and how he communicates with them and how he wants to implement them into the system, into the squad. And, I think he promotes a lot of brotherhood within the team too, and making the players that have a lot of caps with the team go and sit with the younger guys, go and sit with the newer guys. And that shows that he is clearly a good coach. But when it comes to being like a football manager, and yeah, is he there yet? I don't think so. Again, it's pretty tactically incompetent at times, and very questionable subs too. The second half against Wales was extremely eye-opening in that sense. And there was a headline that came out today or a little article from ESPN. I didn't read it because people were saying the headline was so misleading, but I think there's some preliminary negotiations going on between U.S. Soccer and him for a negotiation, but he doesn't know what he wants to do yet himself. I think he is potentially looking at opening the door to Europe, but he's not sure yet. But I think right now we still need to weigh out our options and look for an actual decent coach to take over for him. Because what I don't want to happen is fire him and then put in someone that's going to be worse. Because I think a lot of the names that have been thrown out so far in the past few days, it's been like, oh God, no.
Is there anyone, and I'm putting you on the spot because I think before we started recording, I was like, there's no one I have in mind to take over. But is there anyone you
No, I can't think of one that would take over right now and do a better job, to be honest with you. That's available and feasible.
I wouldn't be mad at Cherundolo. I don't know if he's available. I don't know if he wants it. I don't know if they're going to offer it to him, but I just show some love to Steve Cherundolo, who won MLS Cup with LAFC on his first season when people were doubting him. It's not my official backing or shout. I don't really know, but if they picked him, I want to aim.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm excited for the future in general. I mean, I think there are still some legitimate talks about the U.S. competing in the Copa America next year. So, who knows? I think the ceiling is very high for this young, talented squad.
Thoughts on we'll touch on the Dortmund players still in the World Cup, Jude Bellingham and Rafa Guerrero. But I mean, what are your thoughts on do you have any overall thoughts on the World Cup? How it's been so far? We don't need to talk about all our German nationals because that wasn't a great showing for them. But
that's a whole nother episode, is discussing the German national team, and I would love to get someone else on for that. But
I was gonna say we can leave those episodes to Stefan from the Yellow Wall and Manu from Gegenpress, and they are. I know Manu did Gegenpress, and they talked a lot about that. So maybe just go listen to those episodes because.
Yeah, exactly. We support the boys around here. I mean, Jude, besides the game against the U.S., I think Jude has obviously been phenomenal. People have, watched him play pretty much this whole tournament. I would imagine any fans of Dortmund are obviously English fans as well. I forgot who tweeted it, but I retweeted it on our page a few days back. But I would just wish to God we could watch a single football match and not talk about transfer market and stocks. And because I think a handful of big sources were as Jude was playing in these games, man, every club's going to want him and talking about his price and everything. And it's just God, can we just leave this shit elsewhere and just watch a game and just enjoy the sport, please, for God, and enjoy and appreciate the talent rather than talking about these price tags all the goddamn time. Guerrero, haven't seen he's had some decent moments. Of course, he had a really good goal in the knockout stage the other day, but I haven't seen him. I guess I haven't personally watched him play too much for Portugal. Not that he hasn't, but I just haven't personally seen him.
Yeah, I haven't watched too much of Portugal, mainly because I'm like, I don't like Ronaldo. And I did see that they, in the game that Rafa scored, I think it was yesterday as if we're recording on Wednesday, I forget the guy that they brought in, but he's a young dude, hasn't played much for the national team, starts over Ronaldo and gets a hat trick. And I love to see it. I love it.
Yeah, Gonçalo Ramos, he's the never-ending revolving door of Benfica, making great strikers in the last, I don't know how many years now. But yeah, I mean, he looked fantastic. That first finish of his was in the opening minutes of that game was unreal against Switzerland. I mean, how he found the back of the net is beyond me. Yeah, I mean, people have said in the last year or so that, Ronaldo needs to kind of have some self-awareness here and be like, am I the person that should be leading the front line in this team anymore?
Yeah, and then I do want to touch, we talked about Jude, but the last game, did they play Senegal? I think I said it earlier. I think that they played Senegal. They won 3-0.
Yes.
Jude was very much involved in created the first 2 goals, at least if I remember correctly. He got the assist on the first goal. The second goal started from a Jude pass. Just very much involved in every aspect of that game. And other games, like you said, besides the U.S. game, he's been looking great, which is I don't know, exciting. And also as a Tottenham fan too, seeing Jude and Harry Kane link up was just magical. I liked it a lot.
I mean, he's undroppable for this English team already. I mean, again, we've mentioned it already, but he is the only non-Premier League player in this squad, and he is undroppable. I mean, it goes to show you how absolute just class this kid is. And again, a kid. He's 19.
Yeah. So just to wrap up World Cup stuff, give the schedule and the games upcoming, just so you know, just because I always open the schedule day of. I was like, who's playing today? I don't really know, but let's see. Croatia and Brazil. Croatia and Brazil, Friday morning, 9 a.m. Central Time. We're in St. Louis, so Central Time. Netherlands, Argentina at 1 p.m. Central Time. Then on Saturday, Morocco versus Portugal, 9 a.m. Saturday morning. And then England versus France, Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time. Really exciting games coming up. I'm really looking forward to it. It's been a great...
Yeah, there is.
I know a lot of mixed feelings, especially political issues and everything. But that aside, it's been some exciting... And I don't want to, try to not shed light on that. Fox, the Fox broadcast just doesn't talk about any of those issues. And I'll just give a plug for the Grant Wall and his Football with Grant Wall podcast, because he's got detained for wearing a shirt with a rainbow on it, heading into the match, and then he also got pulled aside for another situation. So if you want to hear more about that and real stuff that's going on the ground too, just reporters and media and just people in general in Qatar, it's not great. And I don't like that the Fox broadcasts are just kind of only talking about the soccer. We don't need to get into a lot of it, but obviously human rights are almost non-existent for a lot of people in Qatar, and that's not great. So I just want to push that out there before I just praise this World Cup. The soccer has been exciting, but obviously Qatar sucks.
Yeah.
Just keep it simple. But besides that, Carver, do you have anything else? Is there any other Dortmund updates you want to touch on real quick, or just next week mid-season review?
Next week mid-season review. One last thing that I don't know. This is just purely speculation, everyone, but I just found this very interesting in the last few hours, and maybe I just went over my head and didn't realize it. But Jadon Sancho, in the last few days, has deleted everything off of his Instagram, including his Avi. And the only thing he has on his Instagram now are 2 tagged photos, one with Royce and one in front of the yellow wall. I know Manu did a piece on it actually that I just retweeted today, but I don't know. That just sparked my interest. I was like, oh, weird.
Interesting.
It is.
Now I'm intrigued. He's coming back in January.
I mean, in January.
Well, I'll have a link to that that video from Manu in the description of this episode. And again, it's on our Twitter at the BVBpod. But I think that does it for this episode. Carver, I don't know if it's lack of discipline. I just like talking with you. That's why we do this podcast every week. But we said this was going to be a short episode, and it's probably be edited down a little bit. But as of the recording, just hit an hour. Probably be a little short of that. The real episode will be shorter than that. But we went a little longer than we planned. But hey, I like hanging out and talking soccer with you, so it's all good.
Ditto. And thank you for everyone who stuck around for this long.
And if you haven't already, again, mid-season review, fill out that form, that Google Doc, which is linked in the description of this episode. And we will be back next week. We'll see you later.
Peace.